Hey guys, and welcome back for another content of Ragnarok M Classic Global Server. So we are already at week 5 of the server, and I think most of us are at level 100 now. Some players already reached the master skills, so I think it's time for another tier list on what are the most effective or trash master skills as of the moment. This is the master skill tier list. As you already know here in the global server, the Master Skill 2 is also unlocked, so we don't need to wait for another month, which is nice. I will be going to list all the current Master Skills, so this may be a long video, but I will try to do a short commentary on why I put it on that list. And disclaimer, this is just my personal opinion for which I have experience playing the C server. If you have comments and suggestions about my tier list, feel free to do so, and let's discuss in the comment section. No need to be toxic. So first, we go for the Rune Knight. Rune Knights, in my opinion, is one of the best classes in the game, since most of their stat progression can increase their overall attack damage. That is why I made an RK on the global server. I think it's safe to say that both MS builds are on the S tier, with the MDef switch streak being nerfed when using the Emir's Handbook. From the SS tier, they will go down to the S tier. Not much of a letdown since RK is still a solid class. I just feel that the auto attack crit is a much superior in terms of efficiency than the Dragon Breath build because of their long cooldown. Still, both build deserves on the S tier. Next is the Royal Guard. It is really obvious that the MS1 or their instant slash build is one of the strongest builds in the game, since it can one-shot multiple targets at once. It deserves to be SS tier. While the MS2 or the Ultimate Sacrifice is a utility build meant for absorbing damage taken by allies. While it may be really strong if used right, the efficiency of this skill is kind of bad since the cooldown is quite long. So in my opinion, the RG's MS2 is on the A tier, average. Next up is the Archbishops. The MS1 or their Holy Light Blow is a good skill when used properly. Applying Fate Ray to most of your allies is a huge advantage in battle. However, the downside is also the cooldown because it takes too long to use it again. So for this one, I will just put it on the A tier. And on their MS2, the Exorcism Storm, this build can do both DPS as well as healing and buffing. The damage of this skill build is also really strong as it can convert the target's attribute into a dark with their Expatio passive, for which the holy damage of the Archbishop will be much more effective. So in my opinion, MS2 of Archbishop is an S tier. Now for the Shura. Shura has been very underwhelming ever since the MS1 came out in the C server. They have been power crept by other classes. The MS1 or the Flame Blast is a burst skill, a really strong AoE skill. However, because the cooldown is 30 seconds, this skill is almost good for nothing. B tier for sure, underwhelming. But for their MS2 or the Supreme Conviction, I think are quite good now for PvE since they can spam Asura Strike in every 2 seconds if used right. The only downside with this is they will first stack buff for every 12 seconds with a maximum of 3 stacks to be much more effective. And this skill can be useless if you get dispelled by a Sorcerer. Still, I would rank this MS2 on the A tier, just average. Next is for the Warlocks. In the C server, Warlocks are still one of the best DPS in the game with their MS1 or the Spiritual combo. Low cooldown skill that can easily spam on the battlefield. Obviously one of the most broken builds in the game, so it is safe to say that the Warlock MS1 is on the SS tier, no doubt. However, for their MS2, which mainly focuses on fire element, the Crimson Magic Arrow, it's just average in my opinion. The fact that you will just use one element skill is kind of disadvantageous to some element attributes, and the DPS is also average compared to the MS1. So for this matter, the MS2 will be at the A tier. Now for the Sorcerers, their MS1 has been really forgotten. The utility that this skill gives is also underwhelming. That is why this class became a useless DPS but a very good utility. But since their MS1 is more focused on bolter build, I can safely say that this is a C tier, trash. But since they became a more of a utility role, their MS2 can also provide them with a good amount of damage with their Venom Swamp. This master skill is really good, especially in PvP, since it can bypass land protectors. It is also not noticeable until your HP is being depleted. A very solid master skill, and I can say they are on the S tier, since they can be invisible while dropping Venom Swamps plus elemental fields, just like the Poison Smoke of GX but on steroids. Next we have the Ranger. With the recent buff of the ADL Rangers, including the Meteor Fission of their arsenal is a good addition to help them hit multiple targets. However, their endgame damage is still not that impressive compared to other DPS classes. Still a good class, but I will put them on the A tier. The MS2 or the Deep Line Trap, however, is a much more unique build. It has more AoE but the damage is quite mid. However, if you stack so many traps and activate it all at once in an area, I'm pretty sure it can one-shot even a tank class. So in my opinion, MS2 of Ranger is an S tier. A really solid build for bursting down targets. And now for the performers. They also receive a buff on the recent patch, especially with their Raging Storm skill. After the patch, the performers have been really strong and efficient in dealing DPS. And they are also quite good now in PvP, as they can burst down targets. With their MS1, their Raging Storm's damage can increase furtherly and can spam with a low cooldown. So in my opinion, they deserve the S tier, as they can also support allies as well as resurrecting them. For their MS2 however, it lacks efficiency. It's really nice to have, especially on hard instances, but comparing it to MS1's performance, it just can't compete. So I think this has to be A tier. Now for the mechanic. I think the MS1 mechanic is one of the strongest classes now. It is just underrated for a reason, unlike Warlock and RG. ABR Cannon is really good for instance, and it's just low cooldown. So it is safe to say that the MS1 mech is also on the SS tier. However, their MS2 or the Triple Laser is mediocre. Spending Zenny to max this skill is just a waste of resources in my opinion. Because why spend master skill Zenny if you can just switch to a Ranger? They now have the Meteor Fission skill that is also range multiple target. It just defeats the purpose of having MS2 for mech. The damage should be adjusted as this is a master skill. I'm kind of disappointed honestly because it's a fun build, but I think the MS2 deserves to be on the B tier. For the genetics, the MS1 is really good at early stages of the game, but it became less relevant in the late game. The damage it provides as well as being utility is not so impactful. That is why so many genetics MS1 builds have already switched. In my opinion, this MS1 is now at C tier. However, their MS2 or the Forbidden Acid Zone is becoming a really good skill for genetics now, as it can deal strong damage while breaking the target's gears. It is still kind of underrated, but I think it deserves the A tier spot. Next, we have the Guillotine Cross. GX received a buff for their MS1, which now is a 100% uptime. With this, it can deal continuous AoE damage, which really helps them in clearing multiple targets. The damage is also great, but not really that strong compared to other classes, so I think they still belong on the A tier. Their MS2 is also quite strong, good for bursting down enemies, but when dealing with PvE bosses, they kinda struggle to keep up with other DPS classes. So I think just the same as the MS1, the MS2 is also at the A tier. Good but not really that strong enough to compete. Lastly is the Shadow Chaser. I remember the early days of Shadow Chaser really dominating the PvP with the MS1. It's a really strong skill. However, in the late game, it was power crept by other classes' master skills. I think they are just really good because they can hide while attacking. Just like Shura, they lack on dealing good AoE damage, so I think they will fall to the B tier. Also, their MS2, the Abyssal Graveyard, is a joke. While it may be very strong versus a crowd of enemies because it triggers a huge AoE really fast, it lacks trigger chances when facing one enemy, which is a boss or MVP. And also, the biggest downside of this skill is being visible while the Abyssal Graveyard is existing on the ground. The fact that Shadow Chasers are a sneaky class defeats its purpose. So I think the MS2 is not worthy to invest in. C tier. And I think I'm good with my tier list. Remember that this is just my opinion regarding my experience in the C server. If you have comments and suggestions, like what I've said, leave it in the comment section. If you find this video helpful, then please leave a like. Also subscribe to support my channel. As always, thank you for watching, stay safe and have an awesome day. Lights out.